Hi, welcome to our webinar, Adult Developmental Services. What are they and how can someone be eligible? And what is the process? I am Julie Brennan. I'm the Director of Behavioral Services here at Pine Tree Society. And I'm joined with
Michael Bell, Pine Tree Society Children's Case Management. And then also on this webinar, we have two interpreters, Amy and Byron, who will also be on the side.
Some general housekeeping. This presentation is going to be recorded. And since we are in the webinar feature of Zoom, there will be different features than you're used to if you're just used to attending meetings. The raise hand feature is not enabled during this webinar, and the chat feature is not going to be used as well. However, we did put our contact information in the chat, so you can use that and reach us if you have any questions after the presentation is over. While the presentation is going on, you can type any questions into the Q&A section, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar, the presentation. So to start, our introduction is, the goal is to prepare and provide tools for you and to assist your children or child in the transition into adulthood. We will cover planning and tasks that should be completed in the presentation and for successful transition into adulthood. An overview of the process for eligibility, an overview of what services are available in Maine, and we will end with the question and answer period. So Mike will start.
So again, we're going to jump right into eligibility for adult services. Transition obviously has many different components, but we're going to focus today on the services and the eligibility for those. First step would be eligibility with OADS. OADS is an acronym you're going to see quite often through the presentation, and you may hear through your child's transition process. That stands for Office of Aging and Disability Services. So this is the adult services for the Department of Health and Human Services. One thing to keep in mind is that this is not automatic. So oftentimes people assume that children's case management, children's services, that you will automatically move into adult services and begin getting those. You do have to go through a determination process. So that process is where we're going to begin today, and that's with submitting a referral and the supporting documents to OADS. If you have a case manager, they'll be one of your main contacts for that and will help support you in getting all of that done in time and within the time frame needed. Couple pieces that they're going to support you with, and that is gathering assessments that are needed. You need to have an eligible diagnosis, which could be Autism Spectrum Disorders, developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities. And that comes in the way of a psychological or neuropsych evaluation. And then you also have to have adaptive scores. And that would be an assessment either called the ABAS, that's ABAS, or the Vineland. And then from there, your case manager will help complete the referral and submit it to OADS for you. This slide just covers some of the contacts, some of the people that you may meet in this process as we go through. So there's their contact and names. So what's next? After that referral is submitted, the intake coordinator is going to gather all that information that the case manager submitted and make sure everything's there that they need. And then an intake meeting will take place and be scheduled. At that meeting, they oftentimes come to your home. Sometimes it's done at this point virtually. Sometimes they can do it at the case manager's office. They're quite flexible with that. So after that's happened, you need to have at least one guardian present, and the individual must attend for at least a portion of that meeting. After the meeting's taken place, the intake coordinator again will share that information with their supervisor, who will ultimately make the determination based on eligibility criteria. And then last in that process is you're going to get a letter in the mail that states a determination, whether it be that you've been found eligible for OADS services or that you have been denied. Along with that letter is going to be a choice letter and a list of case management agencies that provide adult case management. And that way you have a choice in that process who you choose. So with this process, there's oftentimes a lot of myths out there, and people make some assumptions based on different information that they've heard over time. One of those big myths is in the way of accessing children's services, and you're just automatically found eligible and you can begin starting the services as an adult. That is a myth. You have to go through the eligibility process, and you also have to be 18 to begin accessing those adult services. Another piece of information that's out there is about the timeline that OADS has to make the determination. After completing a referral intake meeting, they technically have up to 90 days to make that determination. Very often, they're much faster than that. They do a great job getting through that with so many, but they do have up to 90 days to do that. So once you've gotten that letter and you have been approved for OADS, sorry, misplaced here. I'm going to back up just a little bit onto the MaineCare piece. Apologize. Once your child turns 18, they do need to continue to have MaineCare to access these services. And at that time, they can be considered separate from the family in terms of assets and things like that. So it's important to check in with MaineCare around that time as well. MaineCare, again, is required for adult services, case management, or any of the other services and programs. So again, back to being approved for OADS. What does that mean? It does not mean you can automatically be going and accessing the services. It just means that now you are eligible for adult case management, and then they can help you develop a plan and begin applying for the services. Again, I just want to reiterate that they're going to send you a list of providers for adult case management, and you have a choice at that time. Oftentimes, your current case manager, if you have one for children's, the agency may have adult case management, but if not, either way, they can help support you in making choices, reaching out to agencies and establish that as part of the transition process. If you don't have a current case manager, that list that they do send you will have contacts, and you could feel free to reach out and contact multiple agencies, do interviews, meet and greets, and so on to make a good informed choice on who might be the best fit for you. And then once the agency is chosen, you'll need to do releases and paperwork with them for an intake. So case managers are a big part of the process and establishing next services for an individual as they get into adulthood. Things that they can help with. Assessing the needs and completing a comprehensive assessment, developing a person-centered plan, often referred to as a PCP, completing referrals for services. There are currently wait lists for these services, so it's important to get on those. Coordinating the services themselves, being able to check in with providers, make sure things are going well. Monitoring, assessing individual safety, well-being, and stability, as well as monitoring the progress towards goals identified in their PCP, and that's their person-centered plan. And then case managers are required to meet a variety of training and staff qualification requirements. So it is important to, when you do your interviews, to discuss those things to make sure you're be happy with your choice. Other pieces that they can assist with would be to help individuals access employment, education, housing, social and other supports in the community, connect to necessary medical services. They can work with individuals, families, and services to make sure, again, that they're going well, goals are being met. Assist individuals and parents or guardians in navigating the service system in general.
So what about services? To be found eligible for services, your case manager will have to apply on your child's behalf. It is not, you're not just found eligible because you were assigned a case manager in adult services. And you can't apply until your child turns 18 and they've been determined eligible. So starting the process early and having them found eligible prior to 18 will help you navigate into getting on to those wait lists. So some of when we're talking adult services, there are many sections of MaineCare. There are two primarily used sections of MaineCare for adult services, and that's section 29 and section 21. But there are other waiver programs that can also assist your child depending on the needs. Section 19 is a waiver for elderly and adults with disabilities. There's section 20, which is for adults with other related conditions. And then there's a section 17, community support services for mental health. So what is this section 21 and 29 I always hear about? Section 21 is a comprehensive, the larger waiver program. It was the original one that the state of Maine started with. It covers a larger array of services, and it's based on a priority and needs-based program. So if you applied, many years ago, you can still be at the same level for many years. Whereas section 29 is the smaller program, though they have increased a lot of services to it. But it's called the support waiver. So it's really designed to help keep your child at home, and allow you to work and do the things that you need to do, but also provide care for your child. It doesn't include as many services as 21 and not as comprehensive. And this one is a first come, first serve. So the date you get on determines when you'll get off. So again, it's first come, first serve. So it's really important to sign up right away. Currently, the wait list is roughly about 9 months. It kind of ebbs and flows. There should be some funding coming, but it really depends on the year, what funding is available. And so once you go on, you'll get a letter saying that, yes, you were found eligible. However, we don't have any funding for you. And so you have to wait until services, the funding is available, and then you'll receive a new letter. Another truth or myth. Now that my child is eligible, They can start receiving services right away, and that is a myth. They have to be applied and wait for the funding to be available. Now, Section 21, the needs-based, it has an extensive wait list, and there's 3 priorities on the wait list. You have priority 1, and that's really for the people in dire circumstances, major health and safety needs, crisis, adult protective. Priority 2 is that things are getting bad, there's danger of having a health and safety need, but it's not to the urgency of priority 1. And priority 3 is they're fine at home and everything's good and they're well cared for. However, eventually they may need services. So a lot of our clients that live at home in a safe and happy home, they'll be priority 3. But getting on priority 3 at least tells the state how many people are in need of this service. And so currently there's not much funding available, but there is, they are awarding priority 1 and some priority 2. Okay. Sorry, got distracted. I saw something pop up. Okay, so Section 21, again, it's a comprehensive program. It has the same 29 has the same services as 21. However, 21 has a lot more. The primary difference is Section 21 has the group homes, has more hourly home support built into it. So again, on the priorities with 21, if your child is assigned priority 3 and something changes in your life, your adult case manager can do what they can call it reconsideration. It's basically resubmitting the application for services, and the waiver manager will review and see if there's a change in need enough to rise the priority. If there's not a reconsideration, you will remain on that priority until something happens and one is put forth. So what are the adult services? The typical ones that most utilize are the community support, home support, employment support, and assisted technology. And all of 4 of these are both on 21 and 29. And this is just a quick kind of capture of all the services that are listed under 29. So there's career planning, the ones I talked about. Respite, it's very tricky and hard to utilize at this point. We're hoping it opens up better in the future. And then shared living, and that's fairly new to Section 29. Transportation, again, is not a well-utilized service because most of transportation is included in community support and other services. And then we have the work support and group and individual, but they're closing out the group and it'll just be individual. Section 21, as you can see, it's more comprehensive, as many other services, and I won't list them all. So I'm just going to go into a little more depth into some of the other, the basic services. So home support, it can be hourly home support, which is someone coming into your house, or your child is in an apartment. They help with independent living, cooking, grocery. However, And this is also offered under 21 and 29. The hours vary between the programs. The other thing that hourly home support isn't quite the same as Section 28 home support. It has to be focused on the house and household related tasks. It can't be community, because that looks like our community support service that we will be talking about in a couple slides. And then there's shared living, and that's where a member resides in, shares a home with a provider. And the home can belong to the provider or the member, and they assist with daily living. Again, this is offered under both services, 21 and 29. The main difference between 29 and 21 with shared living is 29, you don't have, uses up most of the budget. So the child or adult cannot go to community support as many hours as they could under 21, but that's really, and also 29 can be authorized at not 365 days a year. It could be 350 days a year. And that's something you talk with your case manager and other providers about. And then the home support per diem is the group homes, and that is strictly under 21. And to just go into a little bit more about shared living, so it is also kind of known as adult foster care. It is a daily billed service, and it could be under 365 days a year under Section 29. The member lives in the home, and some of the supports are adaptive skill development, assisted with ADLs, community inclusion, and transportation. And under this, you can do the community activities, whereas under hourly, you can't as much. And I just lost my slide. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. So back to community support. So community support is to assist with an active, healthy, and to integrate into the community. It can be provided in a center or out in the community. Currently, the ratio is 1 to 3. However, it's in flux, and some rules are changing. So that will too. And some of the examples are learning safety skills, crossing the street, getting help, how to seek out help, and protective skills, learning how to take care of the health and be active. Sometimes they're going to the Y, or going on hikes, or canoeing, swimming, biking, how to use public transportation, how to become involved in activities and clubs and events, and learn what is in your community and how to access, and also to volunteer. So there's, and a lot of the programs have different specialties. There's some that kind of specialize in art or agriculture, or, active hiking in the woods, or different outdoor activities. So there's a variety. And again, your case manager can help you figure that out. So employment. There's 3 parts to employment. There's career planning, and career planning is to help the adult figure out what they want to do, what they might be good at, what's in your local environment. So with this, the person will work with the adult to identify their skills, and then they start looking in the community where they live and what jobs might meet those skills. It's a really good first step. At the end of it, it refers to vocational rehab, which I'll talk about next. There's also employment specialist, and this is a pretty smaller, shorter program, and it is to help maintain the job. So the adult might have a couple hours of employment specialist to just check in and see if everything's going well. And work on safety, or talking to their boss, or talking to the co-workers. And then the work support is the direct one-on-one. They can be with them the whole shift, or they can be there for an hour to check in once a week. It's really individualized on what the person needs. I'm definitely not going to go into detail on voc rehab. The important thing is that it helps with exploring and establishing and maintaining employment. And they do the development of the job. And so the referral happens either through career planning or a case manager, or it can be a self-referral. And it is necessary to utilize vocational rehab services if your child is going to need assistance from the waiver to support them on the job. If they do not have that VR first, then the waiver can't pay for job development. So it is an important step. And the last service I'm going to talk about is assisted tech. And this service can include assessment, device, technology, and it's used to directly assist the member in selection, acquisition, or use of a device. And it can be used to help them learn how to use the device, transmission fees, and other things to help them live more independently. And now I will pass it over to Mike.
All right, thank you. So one of the things that comes up with questions oftentimes for young adults is what happens between 18 and 21. Oftentimes, again, if you're just getting on a wait list at 18 for adult services, you're kind of wondering, well, am I going to be able to have access to anything? You certainly do. So we're going to go through a couple, some of the Q&A on what Section 29 services particularly can be used while still in high school. So if my child is still in school and is offered Section 29, when do we have to decide whether or not to accept Section 29? So after you've received a written offer of a waiver services, so like Section 29, home supports, for example, you have 60 days to respond if you get that waiver, Section 29. If you accept the waiver, you have then 6 months to begin using it with services. If you don't respond to the offer or don't begin using that service within 6 months, your child's name may be removed from the wait list, and then you're going to have to reapply. So it's really important to work with your case manager, accept that offer when it does come in, and then you can begin talking about how you're going to best use it. Another question that comes up is, my child is found eligible for OADS. Do they have to choose an adult case manager right away? And the answer to that is no, they don't have to. You have the option to stay in children's case management until they turn 21 years old and they age out of children's services. So at that point, you can no longer access any of the children's services upon turning 21. But if you received funding, a funding offer, so Section 29 or 21, then you would need to switch to adult case manager at that time. because they're going to be managing, obviously, the adult services under OADS. And then one thing to kind of keep in mind also with that is you don't necessarily need the adult case manager yet to apply for waiver services. So that's something that comes up oftentimes too, is people assume that, well, if I stay with children's, I can't get on those lists for adult services. And most children's case managers and agencies such as ourselves can access that and support you with that. So next question is, my child has been found eligible. Can they start receiving services? Well, not right away. The case manager will need to apply for the services and most likely to be placed on a wait list. Your child will have to wait for funding to open, like Julie had mentioned. So that's why it's important upon getting that eligibility letter to get right on those wait lists and have your case manager start. And that can be an adult case manager or a children's case manager. Both can support you with that. The next question is about, can my child use Section 29 services while they're still in high school? If so, which services can they use? The short answer is yes, they absolutely can begin using that while they're still in school. Although not all of those services can be accessed while they're still accessing school. While they're enrolled in school, some of those services they can access would be things like home supports, career planning, assistive technology services, but things that your child cannot access under 29 while they're still in school would really be the things like community supports, some of the work support pieces. So those would have to wait until completing. And then how do we decide whether or not to take the Section 29 waiver if your child is still in school? Big thing would be to talk to your current team, talk to your case manager who is familiar with things like the wait lists, services that are available, things like that. Talk about the pros and cons of making those decisions. And then just be certain that you understand, those choices and the pros and cons of both. To consider not accepting the Section 29 right away, it's important to find out if there is a wait list. As Julie said, there currently is a wait list, so you would need to wait for longer once making the decision. So in short, kind of work with your current team and make a plan as far as a timetable for accessing. Lastly, can my child receive services under Section 29 and still use Section 28 or 65? So for some of those people that may not be familiar, 28 and 65, those sections are children's services. Section 29 is an adult service. So if you choose to access the adult service, Section 29, you do have to end the children's services at that time. You can't have both at the same time. But your case manager can kind of help you to make that as seamless as possible. There's many agencies that provide both children's and adult services. So next, I think we're just going to kind of go into the question and answer piece to the presentation. And
stop sharing the screen for real this time. And I'll see if there's any questions we can answer. Okay.
Read that from there, Julie.
Should case managers be doing this before the child turns 14?
So I guess I would say on that, 14 is certainly one of those, that's the age of transition. So you're going to hear about that in school a lot. The things you might want to start thinking about would be things like evaluations, things like that, getting those scheduled, because that helps with the eligibility process. You wouldn't be able to apply for OADS at that time, but certainly getting things in order, like the assessments, would be important.
Okay, question 2. You keep mentioning staying at home, but what about if the adult wants to live independently? Can they still get services? Yes, so definitely can. One option is if they need more support, they can live in a shared living with another provider. But we also, the case manager can help put on the housing wait lists and get hourly home support. We have quite a few individuals that are living completely independently, and hourly home support comes in, periodically to check in or help, prep meals or grocery shop, and then they're on their own. But they're eligible for any services no matter what environment they live in.
Absolutely. So there's definitely individuals who access community services and home supports, work supports, and things like that. And they live on their own with those. So
can an 18-year-old continue with Section 28 if they accepted the waiver services and are on the waiver wait list for 29 while they are waiting for funding, after they receive the funding and are waiting for a provider?
okay, I think I hope I'm getting the question correct and what you're looking for, but once you begin picking up the services under 29, then you have to end. So that's a good question. That happens quite a bit where you're currently maybe getting Section 28 and you're looking at a 29 provider. So you can accept the waiver, I guess, but be waiting for the services and keep accessing children's at the time. You want to work with your case manager to kind of work out the timing with those agencies because you can't have them both happening at the same time, but certainly you can be doing 28 while you're waiting for 29.
Yeah, and you don't have to end 28 until you have a provider and you're gonna go live with 29. At that point, then we have to end, but you can still keep it going until that last minute. But however, you do have to watch the 6-month time clock. Right now during COVID, that's been a little lax, but I'm sure once everything kind of returns, then the 6 months will be monitored by the department. Since Maine has begun to provide special education services to students who are 22, will 29 extend to that age?
So I'm assuming that some of that might be a question about children's services continuing also to 22 instead of 21. At this time, children's services are still only going up until 21. 29 can begin as early as 18 and they're eligible, and funding is of course approved.
Yeah, and I know, some of the families I'm working with are trying to figure out, should I accept 29? And you can if they're still going to be in school, if you have those services Mike talked about. But it is a big decision. How recent do evaluations need to be?
Sure, good question. So there was 2 evaluations that we talked about. One is the diagnostic confirmation. That's in a psych or neuropsych evaluation. Those have to be within 3 years of being submitted. And oftentimes that's as early as 17 that your case manager will submit those to OADS. So those within 3 years for the diagnostic piece. The adaptive scores that we talked about, that's a Vineland or an ABOS, those have to be within a year. So one way to do that that's usually quite helpful is to make sure at those triennial IEPs at school that evaluations get discussed and be planning ahead, because they can oftentimes make that a part of what they're doing for testing for the tribe.
So the shared living question, there can be more than one in a shared living. However, the guidelines are that they have to be friends or have some kind of relationship prior to moving in. But the other caveat is it's really only paid for one person. So each person would get kind of a half of payment. So it would be the same amount of money for 2 as it is for 1. Yes, with a gap in providers, especially if you're lucky enough to have a children's provider too. Yes, keeping it, because getting especially hourly home support is as difficult for adults as it is for children to get 28 providers right now.
So planning ahead the best you can and working with your case manager should help.
Connection. What age should we actually apply for OADS eligibility? 3 months before 18, or do we wait until 18?
So you can apply as early as 17. So OADS has been really great about allowing that to happen. And then we talked about the 90 days that they have. So what can happen essentially if you applied for OADS after 17 years old with your case manager support, you might get an eligibility letter, and the eligibility letter will also indicate that they can't begin accessing those services until they turn 18, but you can be proactive and get that in advance. So
okay. What is the recertification process, and how do they have to do assessments? So I'm not quite sure exactly if they're a priority 3 on the wait list and you're trying to go up. There's no, they just the adult case manager just has this one basic assessment that they update. It's nothing formal really. Once your child is found eligible, there's no evals needed, like psych evals or neuropsych, unless that's medically necessary. Something's changed and we want to get to the bottom of that. The rest of the assessments the case manager just kind of does and updates from, talking with you and the child and the adult and going through that. So I hope that I answered that. Why is that on the shared living? I'm guessing. I'm not really sure why. I know part of the reason was when it was designed, they didn't want forcing people to live together. And it's designed to be part of the family and one person as part of the family. So I think they made the caveat for 2, just in case, like you have a couple that want to live together or something like that. So they made that arrangement, but as far as the funding, I'm not really sure. And I don't know if they're looking at it or if that's just the way it's gonna be. My granddaughter is almost 15 and entering high school. Your topic is a transition to adulthood can be a stressful process that ideally should begin between 12 and 14. We have 3 case managers during this period and not have anyone mention transition or has a school. Should I be worried?
I'm hoping you should not be worried. So sometimes I think it's about priorities at the time, and without knowing your granddaughter's case, a lot of times between 12 and 14, that's about building your team, building, skills for that child and things like that. At 14, you're going to start to hear a lot more about it because it has to be part of the IEP. So that 12 to 14 is kind of the early end of that transition planning and skill building. So don't be too worried, but it may be worth asking some questions to current case manager just to see where they're at with that in the planning.
Oh, the Katie Beckett research. So adult services, you will have the MaineCare will have a annual review. You just kind of fill it out and send it back in. And as far as the waiver services, the case manager I'll get a classification and the case manager will take care of all that and just submit the paperwork and keep them going.
Yeah, and then the other thing with Katie Beckett as an adult, just keep in mind, because we know that, you know, Katie Beckett can go, I guess, technically into adulthood a little bit. Just to kind of go refer to some of the earlier slides where we were talking about the MaineCare, and keep in mind that at that point when they turn 18, then it's about, you can contact MaineCare and they may be able to get off Katie Beckett and onto straight MaineCare under just themselves. So that will be helpful, because I know everybody just not always a fan of doing those research every year. So, and paying the premiums as well.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you for participating, and certainly if there's any other questions that come up, feel free to contact us, and the contact is in the chat as well for you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Oh, wait, have we got a couple more? Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Take care. Thanks. Bye.